Okay, this is the second video, and in this video I'm going to review some of the things we learned in the first video, and I'm going to tell you more about how to make a web page. As I mentioned in the first video, a website is really nothing more than just a folder on a computer. And if you open that folder, you can see a web page. Now, a web page is just a text file, and inside the text file you would put HTML code. Now, you can see right here that in this folder I have my index file. But there's something about it that I should mention, and that is that it's not just a normal file. It's what we call an HTML file. Now, in order to see this best, you really should be able to see what we call the file name extension. That is to say, after the name, there comes a dot and then several letters. For example, a text file is the file name .txt, but a web page is the web page name .html. If I open up this web page and we go to see a browser, you'll notice that in the browser it actually shows the full name of the web page, index.html. However, if we close that browser and go back into the folder, you'll see that it just says index. That's because normally on computers, the file name extension, the dot and the last letters are hidden because if you don't know how to handle those, it can cause problems on your computer. But if you're going to be making web pages, you should know about file name extensions. So, how do we see the file name extension? Well, if you're in Windows 7 and if you're in a folder like this one, like your website, you can go to the Organize menu. In the Organize menu, you can go to Folder and Search Options. If you click on this, it'll open up a Folder Options dialog box. Here, you can click on the View tab. Now, down here, inside the View tab, there are several options. One of them, right here, says Hide Extensions for Known File Types. That will hide the .html at the end. Now I'm going to uncheck that. Then I'm going to click OK. And now when we go back here, we can see the full file name of your web page, index.html. Now when you're making a website, it actually is very helpful to see this, because when you're typing these names in web pages, you have to include this part which is normally hidden. And if it's hidden, you can't really see it very well. So it would be best if you could go into Organize, go into Folder and Search Options, go into View, and then make sure that the extensions are not hidden. All right. Now, once again, a folder is a website, and a web page is just a text file. Now, I showed you before that there's a program you can use to create web pages. The program is called Notepad++, and this is what it looks like. This is the page that we made in the last video. Now, in this video, we're going to make another web page. We're going to make a new web page. So I'm going to click on the New Page right here. I'm going to make sure that my language is set to HTML. Now, in this new page, I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to make the basic structure. Now, this is something that I would advise that you do again and again and again so you can do it naturally. You begin with the doc type. You start with the angled bracket, exclamation point, you type doc type, and HTML. That's the beginning. That's going to be the beginning of almost every web page that you make. Next, we make the HTML tags beginning with HTML. I'm going to hit enter several times and do the end for HTML. You'll remember that HTML at the beginning should have the attribute and the value for the language. So I'm going to say language equals, quote, English. And there we go. Remember, this is a tag, this is an attribute, and this is a value. We're going to learn more about these very soon. Now I'm going to make the basic structure. I'm going to make the head. Inside the head, I'm going to make the title. Inside the title, I'm going to say my second web page. Then I'm going to end the title. And then I'm going to end the head. Notice that every time I begin a command, it just has the tag. Every time I end a command, it has a slash at the beginning. Head and end head, title and end title. Notice also that things are nested, that the title is inside the head and the head is inside HTML. That's usually the best way to do things in a web page. Next, I'm going to create the body and create some things there, and then end the body. There we go. And before I did hello world, this time I'm going to be doing something a little bit more constructive. I'm going to say this is a new web page. There we go. So I'd like you to do this yourself. You can watch the video first and then make the page, or you can just pause the video here, open up Notepad++, and do this yourself. But I want you to practice this many times. This basic structure that you can see right here, this is something that you should do again and again and again until you really get used to making that basic structure. Because you're going to be making the structure many, many times. Every web page has this structure, so you're going to have to learn how to do that. All right. Now, this is where we finished the last time. This is where we stopped the previous time. And so now I'd like to show you a few more things about how web pages work. And the first thing I'd like to show you is something called Whitespace Characters. Now, don't worry about what that means. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to hit the Enter key right after this is a new web page. And I'm going to type in this is a second line of text. I'm going to hit Enter and say line number 3, just like that. Now, normally, you would expect that if we take a look at this web page, that we would see 3 lines of text. We would see this line, then this line, then this line. Because after all, at the end of each one, I hit the Enter key, and it appears as 3 lines of text. But that's not how it works in HTML. So I'm going to save this page. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to make sure it's saved in the website next to index.html. Now, this page has to have a different name. The first page should always be index. But after that, you can make almost any name you want. Just try to make it lowercase, all lowercase, just using letters, numbers, maybe an underscore or a hyphen if you need to. So I'm going to call this one page 2. Now I could type .html, but that's not necessary because the program does it for me. So I'm just going to call it page 2. This will automatically make sure it's HTML, and I'm going to save it. There we go. All right, so now if we take a look at our website folder, we can see we've got the index and we've got page 2. So let's take a look at page 2. Now remember, when we made page 2, I typed 3 lines of text in the body. So will we see that? Well, if we open this up in a browser, you'll notice that we don't see 3 lines of text. We just see 1 line. This is a new web page. This is the second line of text. Line number 3. All of these lines have been made into 1 line. And that's because HTML does not recognize, it does not see what are called whitespace characters. Whitespace characters are, very simply, let me get back into Notepad++. A whitespace character is anything that you type in the keyboard which doesn't show any black mark. So if you hit, for example, a tab, that doesn't show any black marks. It's a white space. If you hit the space key, that does not show any black marks. It's a white space. And if you hit the Enter key, that doesn't show any black marks. So the tab, the space, and the Enter key are all what we call white space characters. And those white space characters do not appear. So for example, if I go into the second line and I add a whole bunch of spaces, and then I save this, and I go back into the browser, and I reload the page, once again, you can reload the page by hitting the F5 key. You can see it didn't change. Now, if I go back into Notepad, and I can get rid of all these extra spaces. Now, if I put one space in the middle of the word second, so now we have sec-ond, and I save that, if we go into the browser, we will see that. See? Now I pressed F5, and now we can see the space inside of second. One space will be visible. But if I make many spaces, if I do this, those will not be visible. Only the first space is going to be visible. Those are the rules of HTML. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to make a new line in HTML. If I want to see 3 lines, how do I do that? Well, there's a command that you can put at the end of the line, and it's called break or line break, and we type the angled brackets, BR, and finish the angled brackets. That will make a line break. So if we look at the page now, after this is a new web page, we'll have a line break, and then these two will appear together on a second line. Let me save this. Let me go up to the top here, and I'm going to hit F5, and there we go. You can see right here where I put the BR, it created a break, and it went over to the second line of text. So that's the BR tag. Now, one other thing you might have noticed is that there is no ending tag. When I first told you about the beginning and ending tags, beginning tag and ending tag, I told you that most tags have a beginning and an ending, but not all of them. BR, or line break, is one of the exceptions. It's one of the few tags which does not have an ending tag. Now I can add another BR right here, and I can add another BR at the end of the third line, although that's not necessary quite yet. And we can see after I save it and go over here and I reload the page, now we can see that all the lines are separate. So, like I said, the whitespace characters are not visible. So if you hit enter at the end of a line, that will not make any new spaces. If I hit enter, 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 enter like that, none of those spaces will show up on the website. It'll just look like it did before. So I'm going to go back. So if you want to make a new line, you can make the command BR, like that. All right, so that's a very simple way of doing it, but it's not the way that we normally make different lines or different paragraphs in HTML. There's another way of doing it. Now I'm going to go below that, and we're going to learn about a new command called P. P stands for paragraph, and I'm going to create a beginning and ending P. Now, the paragraph command, like most tags in HTML, has a beginning and an ending. Everything in between is treated as a paragraph of text. So if I say this is a paragraph, paragraph, I'm used to getting a shortcut there. I don't want to write a whole paragraph, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to select this text. There we go. And then I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste. I'm going to use the Control V. Let's see here. Control V many times, and there we go. So why don't I just hit enter after every third line here. There we go. And I'm just making it easier to see right now, but there's a whole bunch of text right there. There we go. So this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph. All of these lines, even though I hit enter, enter, enter many times, all of these lines are part of this one paragraph. So if I save this document, and we take a look at it again, and if I hit the F5 key to reload, there's the paragraph right there. Now, it spans across the entire window. I'm going to take this window and make it smaller so you can see there's the paragraph right there. That acts as a single paragraph. Now, if I go back in here, I'm going to make another paragraph. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to copy this paragraph, and then I'm going to paste it right down here. And so now we have two paragraphs. Let me fix the indent there. So we have a paragraph here, beginning P and ending P, and we have a paragraph here. So what's that second paragraph going to look like? Well, let me save, go back to the browser, and if we press F5, there's the second paragraph. Now notice that there's a space between the paragraphs. This is paragraph spacing. So whenever you use the P tag, the P command, it will separate this block of text from this block of text with a paragraph spacing between them. All right, so that's how you can make new lines and new paragraphs using HTML. All right, so let me see if I can explain this in a different way, because there's a very important point about what I've just showed you that I haven't explained yet. And that is concerning, I'm going to type it out here so you can see the words, excuse me. That is concerning two things called block and inline. Block and inline. These are not tags, these are not commands, these are just expressions. These are names for two different kinds of HTML commands. A block tag or a block command in HTML is a tag which automatically has a line break above and below it. So if you use a block tag, like the P tag for example, there will automatically be a new line above the P, and there will be automatically a new line below the P. That's called a block tag. Inline is different. Inline means that if you make an inline tag, and let me just give you an example of one. I'll choose the B for bold, excuse me. I'm going to make this one word bold. So B is for bold text. I just made this one word, paragraph, appear bold. Now I'm going to save this. We're going to take a look in the browser and see what it looks like, and there it is right here. Do you see how this one word became bold? It did not make a new line. It did not create a new line above or below, before or after. This is inside the line. So that's what we call an inline tag. So making something bold is an example of an inline tag. It doesn't make a new line. Block, however, P is an example of a block tag, and a block tag does make a new line above and below. Let me see if I can give an example of this. I'm going to erase those paragraphs I just made, and I'm going to create a new block. Whoops, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Excuse me. Let me make a new block of text. Make a new block of text, and I'm going to select that text, and again, I'm going to copy and paste, paste, paste. All right, so all of this text will appear as one block in the browser. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'm going to reload. And now we see make a new block of text, make a new block of text, make a new block of text. This is all one big block of text. I can make this bigger or smaller, and that'll all stay together. Now, if I use an inline tag like B for bold, I'm going to do that again. That will not create a new line of text. That will not separate any lines of text. So I just made the beginning and ending B tags around the word block. I'm going to save, go back here, and reload. And now you can see that this word block has become bold. That's an inline tag. That means that I was able to add a command here, but it did not make a new line of text. Now let me try a different tag. This is a new one that you haven't seen before. This is called HR. Like the BR tag, this does not need an ending tag. HR means horizontal rule. Basically, it makes a horizontal line. But this is a block tag. It will create a new space above and a new space below the horizontal line. So I'm going to save that, go back into the browser, reload, and now you can see here is the horizontal line. Notice that the line above it ended, and we have a line break, then we have the line, and then again after this, a new line break. So whenever you have a block element, a block tag, it will always create a new line at the top and the bottom of that tag. So that's the difference between an inline element or an inline tag and a block element like this line right here, or a block tag. So inline and block are two important words to remember. So once again, inline will change the text inside of a line, but a block tag will create a new line above and below what you're doing. So let's take a look at a few different kinds of block tags. And I'm going to erase that line right there. There we go. And create some new lines right there. Okay. So let me teach you about, for example, the heading tags. These are fairly simple. You type the letter H inside the angled brackets, followed by a number, like H1. I'm going to create the end of H1. Like most tags, it has a beginning and an ending. And I'm going to say, this is a heading. I can put some text before. Let me put some text before. And I will put some text after. Now, if this H1 tag, if this were an inline tag, then from here to here would all appear as one line. But it's not. It's a block tag. So that means that this line here will be cut off and it will be a different line. Then this will be a different line. And then this will be a different line because H1 is a block tag. Now, what does H1 do? Well, a heading is basically a title. So H1 is fairly simple. H1 is a block tag and it makes the text big and bold. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go over to the browser and I'm going to hit the F5 key and there is our heading. Here's some text before. Here's some text after, and this is the heading right there. So this is the H1 tag, the heading 1 tag. It's a block tag because it actually not only makes a line before and a line after, but notice it adds some extra space. More than the P tag, it adds more space between it and the lines before and after. That's part of what the heading tag does. Now, there are several different headings. There are, for example, H2 tags, and this is a subtitle. And let me finish the H2. And I can make an H3 tag. There we go. And this is a perhaps a section heading. And again, close the H3. You can go from H1 all the way down to H6. So I did H1, this is a heading, H2, this is a subtitle, and H3, this is a section heading. If I save this, and we take a look at the website, here you'll see H1 is this is a heading, H2 is a subtitle, and H3 is the section heading. You can see that H1 is biggest, then H2, then H3. If we go to H4, H5, H6, it'll all be the same. It'll get smaller and smaller until it's just tiny little text, but they're all bold text. So that's the heading, and notice that each one of them creates a new line above and a new line below. So these are block elements. Now there is one more, and that's called the block quote. Well, actually, there's more than one more. There's actually many, many more, but one more in this lesson I'm going to show you, and that is the block quote. So after some text after, I'm going to create the block quote tag. I'm going to create some text. Here is some text. And then I'm going to end the block quote tag. Excuse me. There we go. All right. So there's a block quote tag. Now what does that do? Now the block quote is not a heading. The block quote does not make it big or bold or anything like that. What block quote does is that it creates a ½ inch indent on the left. So I'm going to save this, go back to the web page, and I'm going to hit the F5 key. And here you can see it's the text. It looks the same as normal text, but there's a ½ inch indent at the beginning. That's what a block quote does. But also notice that it creates a line above and a line below. It creates space above and space below, and it breaks the line. These are block tags. So the P tag, the H tag, and the block quote tags are all block tags. Now, if I double down on block quote, if I create a second block quote tag, here it gets interesting because it actually adds to the previous block quote. So I'm going to create another beginning and ending to the block quote. There we go. So we have one block quote right here inside another block quote. So we have two block quotes. Well, what's going to happen there? Well, I'm going to save it, go over here, and I'm going to reload. And you'll notice that the only thing that changed is that now we have a 1-inch indent. So each time you add block quote, block quote, block quote, the text moves over another ½ inch. Now we're not going to do this very much in the future because there's more advanced HTML which makes it much easier to do indents, and we usually don't use block quote for that. But it's important to remember that block quote, H3 and P, these are all block tags. Now, to give you a better idea of what I mean by that, I'm going to add some code here, and you're not going to understand this, so don't worry, don't try to imitate this, don't try to do this, but I'm going to create a border around the block quote. I'm just going to say border, whoops, not blorder, sorry, border, and I'm going to say 1 pixel solid and gray, and that is all that I'm going to add. Now, what I just typed is called CSS. We're going to learn that in a week or so. But what I did was that I put a border around the block quote so you can see where the block quote is. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'm going to hit F5. Here you can see the border. Now you can see where the block quote is. Notice that it reaches all the way around. It goes from the left side to the right side. I could do the same thing for the heading. Let me do a copy and paste that into the heading number 1. So now we have the same style around the H tag right there. I'm going to save that and reload, and here you can see the heading. The block quote is indented on the left and the right, so it makes that space. The heading is not indented, so you can see it goes right up against the edge, but that shows you where all of that is. So once again, these are block tags. Now, before we finish, I'm going to show you what are called inline tags, and then we're going to finish the lesson. So after the block quote, I'm going to make a paragraph and end the paragraph. There we go. And then inside the paragraph, I'm going to have some text, and I'm going to do some inline tags. So I'm going to say, last week I saw, and let's think of a movie title. What movie has come out recently? I really can't think of anything right now, but let's just say Inception. All right. So now when we make a movie title, the movie title should be in italics. How do I make italics? Well, again, I use a tag, but this time I use an inline tag, EM. EM means emphasis, and so I'm going to do EM and /EM, and that's going to make for italic text where we have the word inception. So this is in italics, this is not in italics. And I'm going to say, it was really great. Now, if I want to emphasize the word great, I want to make that bold. I showed you before that we can use the B tag. That's one way of doing it. But you could also use another tag called strong. Strong is for strong emphasis. It makes it bold. And I'm going to end the strong at the end. You can use B, you can use strong. They both do more or less the same thing. So, last week I saw inception, italics. It was really great, inside strong, so that'll be bold. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back to the web page, the browser, and here we go. Last week I saw inception. It was really great. So there's the italic, there's the bold. Notice that when I made the italic and when I made the bold, it did not cut the line. This is inline HTML. So EM and strong are for italic and bold. I can do the same thing with other tags. Let me copy and paste here. Instead of EM, I can do the I tag. I is for italics. It's almost the same as EM. For strong, I can do B. B is for bold, and again, it does almost the same thing as strong does. I'm going to put a BR at the end of this line so that we see two lines. I'm going to save it, go over here, and F5. You can see that it looks exactly the same. Exactly the same italics, exactly the same bold. So you might wonder, why do we have two different commands for italics and two different commands for bold? Well, the answer is that I and B are considered plain italics and bold. That is to say, there's nothing special about it. But EM and strong are considered much more important. So when Google or another search engine sees EM, or when they see strong, they believe it's not just styled italic and bold. These search engines will see EM and strong as being more emphasized. It won't look any different. It'll look exactly the same. But the search engine will say, oh, this word is more important than this word. This word is more important than this word. So EM and strong are the same as I and B. They're just considered to be more emphasized in meaning. It's not something you can see, but it's something a search engine might be able to notice. Okay, so that's enough. I think the lesson has gone on for quite some time, so I'm going to save this page, and I'm going to close this, these windows here, close this one right here, and so now I've created my website. I have two pages now, index from lesson 1 and page 2 from lesson 2. In this lesson, we learned about whitespace characters, that the space, tab, and enter are invisible in HTML. We learned that you can create certain tags like BR or P to create separations between the lines. But we also learned that there's a whole category of HTML tags called block elements or block tags. And these block tags automatically break the line above and break the line below. So we learned about the bold and italic. We learned about the difference between I and EM, B and strong. So that's enough for lesson number 2. Once again, if you have not been practicing, please go ahead and practice this. Do this 2 or 3 times at least so that you can get an idea for how these things work. And that's the end of lesson number 2. We'll be coming back again soon.